Oh, Gus. There's Roxy and Gus being nosy. They love the rabbits. There's Louie, the white and brown. And the brown is Huey. We don't have a Dewey. Oh, Gus, you can't get the babies. Hey, y'all. It's Anna from Mimsy's Garden. You can call me Mims, just like my friends. Today, we're going to talk about the cattle panels. It's chore day, which is every day, on the homestead. And I've got a few more cattle panels that need to be put up in Mimsy's garden. Got a few blooms on the zucchini plants. And even a little zucchini out there. These are the Small Wonder Spaghetti Squash from Hoss Tools. And they do shine. This year, my preferred method for trellising the tomato plants is going to be cattle panels. So until I can get that commercial style greenhouse, this is what I'm doing to protect the tomatoes. So, is this method something that you're interested in? They're useful for other reasons too. You can use them as arch trellises. Here you see I've got some Mr. Big P growing. And yes, my garden is still a wreck from the winter. Haven't done as much as I would like to have done. We had a lot of rain. You can use it for cucumbers, pole beans, oriental yard long beans or noodle beans, trellising your blackberries, all kinds of things. So all you need for trellising tomatoes is a good cattle panel or hog panel even. If you're doing determinate types that are more bushy and don't get quite as tall, a hog panel would work. Cattle panels work better for vining indeterminates, and the bigger varieties you'll want to raise it up, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But a good cattle panel, T-post, and my trusted friend, the post driver. Take some muscle. You got any? Based on what I am planting and how I want to access it is how I laid out my cattle panels. As you can see, this is one that's been cut in half. I divided an area so that I could walk in there. I also tend to like to plant a little bit on both sides. This front side are more bush type determinants. And then the back side are my brandywines on this side. Over here I have some purple tomatoes. Those kind of things. And then I have more brandywines and some Kellogg's yellow breakfast tomatoes that almost got wiped out by the rain. They're looking a little sad, a few of them, but they may make it. May not, but that's okay. At the ends, I like to put the cherry type tomatoes. These are going to be the Sun Golds. I have a Chef's Orange. I have a few Better Boys. But let's get down here to the raised trellis. When you have a tomato variety that likes to get really tall, you're going to want to use 8-foot posts and driven down, and you're going to want to raise your cattle panel. That way you have more vining space, and I still might have to secure a stake right here at the top by strapping it on with some plastic ties or some which way to extend the height, depending on how this one particular tomato grows. This is the only one that survived through no fault of my own. I germinated 6 seedlings and the others did not make it. This is the Trip L crop, and it's known to get really tall and very productive. So I have talked to this one and have promised to baby it. And so far, so good. Also on this taller trellis, I have yellow and black brandywines. Nope, scratch that. These are just red brandywines. I know that they get heavier producing, larger fruits, so I wanted something that I could have an extension on. And as you can see, I go back and forth. On the back side of this trellis is also a smaller bushing type. These are the San Marzanos right through here. And then the front side has some a little bit taller ones. And then I've spaced them in between each other so that the sun still hits all of them. And I'll keep them pruned. That's another thing you have to decide whether is right for you or not. Some people like to prune their tomatoes very heavily or to a single stalk. Some of us just like to prune around the bottom and extra suckers that might inhibit the airflow and promote disease. So I would suggest that whatever variety you're planting, that you do some research and figure out what's going to work best in your zone. I'm in 8A in southeast Mississippi. It is extremely humid and hot here. I mean, it's nothing for our temperatures with the heat index to exceed 117 in the summer. And so if you're not pruning tomatoes pretty good and giving it adequate airflow, then you're not going to get production and you're going to get a lot of disease. Another thing you need to consider when you're putting up your cattle panels is drip irrigation, if you're going to use that, and row spacing. So on some of these rows, you may say, well, Mimsy, you didn't leave a lot of space. And that's true. But I either planted on both sides or one side on the alternating, or like down here, this was originally going to be for some other vegetable crop, but I changed to tomatoes because I decided I needed a few more. And so it looks really tight. But what I'll do back here is plant on the front side of this panel and then again on the back side of this panel. And so that gives my row spacing and it gives room for airflow. So those are things that you need to consider as well when you're doing your cattle panels. So think about your varieties, whether they're determinates, indeterminates, vining or bush type, and also how many plants you intend to use, whether or not you want drip irrigation, whether or not you're going to use weed fabric. All of these things play a part. And I can tell you, it's a lot easier to put your cattle panels up after your drip irrigation and your rows are determined. So that's just a little bit more information I thought you would like to have. It would be my suggestion, if you're going to do the cattle panels, if you have someone available to help you, it would make the job easier. Poor boy works and he's on call a lot. So it's up to Mims to do what she's gonna do in the garden. I have to decide. I'm not videoing myself putting up cattle panels. I'm sure it would be quite entertaining to you. I'm not doing that. But you can see the finished product as I'm going. These are just a few. I've got a couple more left that I'm gonna put up. And I've got some Amish paste left to plant. I've got some German Johnsons and a couple of heirloom Italian heirloom tomatoes. I was going to do a lot of common types like Better Boy and Celebrities and things like that, and I did have a few planted, and then we had 2 of what I call frog strangler rains. That's a southern term. It's a frog strangler out there. it was gully washing, and it just about washed the garden away. And that's why you see some of the black weed fabric. I was actually not going to put it down in some places this year. I was going to use the double wheel hoe that I got for Christmas more and just keep things weeded out and aerated and things like that. But with that kind of water, I had to do something. So I did leave some spaces open just for experimental, and then I covered what I could. But I'm gonna show you, it's been 5 or 6 days since the rain, and I'm gonna show you just how wet this ground still is. This area where Amara planted the green beans is a total wash. Nothing's going to sprout here. Not like this. It's soggy, and it's been 5 or 6 days, and even when I walk, I can feel the slosh still. You can see all that old fabric back there. I'm gonna get poor boy to take the tractor and scoop that up, and we're gonna move it, and I'm gonna repurpose it. I've already started using some of it under that carport frame. That is gonna be my seed starting area. The small old cattle panel greenhouse is going to be just for my tools. Then I'm going to have the seed starting area, and then after the fall, or the summer rather, if I have enough saved, then I will put a peak style high tunnel here across most of the garden. The size that I would like is 25 to 30 foot wide and 60, 65 foot long. My garden space is 88 foot long, and I do want to have a little bit of outside growing space, but mostly I want to be able to grow indoors. I have the chicken garden if I need some other outdoor space, and that's where I actually replanted the green beans yesterday, so hopefully they'll come up. But I think this will be excellent to have the commercial type greenhouse or high tunnel. I want the peak type high tunnel. I don't need a 100 foot long high tunnel. I just don't. So for the shorter versions, they recommend the peak style, and I like the angles of the peaks. I'm not a round shaped person when it comes to objects. I like square or rectangle. I like triangular angles. So I think that would be awesome. So this year is more about production for me than beauty. However, I do like to grow pretty things too, unusual things. Times are changing. It's not always about the aesthetics, is it? So anyway, I hope that you learned a little bit about the cattle panels, and what you need is definitely some muscle, a post driver, T-post, at least 2 per cattle panel if you're going to do them straight. Even on the arches you can get away with 2. I like to use 4 if I'm going to use the shorter garden stake type post. But usually I just use a regular 6 foot or 4 foot T-post and use 2 per panel. And you can secure an arch very well that way. And some zip ties or something to secure it together with. Zip ties seem super easy to me. I like that, and that's what I use. And it's pretty secure. I will still use the Florida weave method on a few of those tomatoes where I left sections open, but I have tomatoes planted. And those are smaller varieties, and it won't be as difficult. Plus, those cattle panels and the bigger tomatoes will help shield them from the winds and rains and things like that. Because, you know, last year my garden got wiped out by straight line winds and hailstorms. So hopefully the cattle panels take care of that this year. Happy gardening. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button.